आपको कोई भी करंट अफेयर्स मैगजीन उठा लो, इट्स अ पेन टू रीड 150 पेजेस विदाउट नोइंग कि कौन सा आएगा कौन सा नहीं, क्या आएगा क्या नहीं. So any news item come which is related to fiscal federalism, we just need to place that news item in this federal framework. This example I'm giving of federalism. जो मेंस में कंटेंट है बट मार्क्स नहीं आ रहा है, ये वाला बहुतों के साथ प्रॉब्लम है. लेट अस एक्सेप्ट दैट. और वो क्यों प्रॉब्लम है? क्योंकि जो स्टैटिक और करंट अफेयर्स वो अलग अलग पढ़ा जाता है और फिर रट्टा मारा जाता है. अगर प्लेन लैंग्वेज में बोलूं, इसमें भी आपको मार्क मिल जाएगा इतना लिखोगे तो. ये सेकंड हाफ ही नहीं मिलेगा ना अगर आप स्टैटिक और परसेंटेज वाइज डिवाइड करके चलोगे. बट द डिफरेंस इज 6 मार्क्स एंड 9 मार्क्स. इसमें डिफरेंस आएगा. इसकी जहां पे करंट अफेयर्स आप पढ़ रहे हो वहीं पे आपको अगर उसका स्टैटिक मिल जा रहा है, दैट विल सॉल्व हाफ आवर प्रॉब्लम. नाउ समवन इन बिटवीन आस्क्ड कि हर पेपर में कितना परसेंट स्टैटिक रहता है, कितना परसेंट करंट अफेयर्स रहता है. प्लीज डू नॉट गो दैट. आप टॉपिक के मेरिट पे डिसाइड करो और जज करो. हेलो एवरीबॉडी, a very good evening to all the participants. Good evening Abhishek, good evening Sudiksha. Okay, how many of you had attended my last webinar? Please let us keep the session interactive so that you gain the maximum out of it. How many of you had attended the last webinar on 25th? Okay, great. So, if you remember, the one takeaway from that was that current affairs plays a very complementary role to static. We are going to build upon that. Anybody who is first attempter and new to this webinar? Okay, Ripesh, Jay, fine. All those people who are first attempters and are very new, please keep an open mind. There might be stuffs or the content which you might not be able to understand. Subsequently, if we meet in the class, you will have a better picture. That's right, Sabha. In the last webinar, we had talked about that your mains answer is 60% static and rest is current. Now we are going to build upon this thought and basically see how can we make our preparation more structured so that we do not randomly scout through current affairs magazines. अगर हमें एक proper framework मिल जाता है to attempt current affairs question, then it would become easier for us to prepare. Now with that thought, you would see on this front page there's an equation given. It talks about analysis of the past plus manipulation of the present is your next attempt, which includes mains answers and your prelims preparation. Analysis of the past means this is basically PYQs for which you have your micro theme document. And then manipulation of the present means current affairs. और present को manipulate करना है किसके basis पे? With respect to static. So this is what we are going to read today. Now, before we move into our debate and discussions and deliberations on the overall view of current affairs, first let us move back in time a bit. Comes circa 2020. Everybody is aware that it was a COVID year. We had discussed extensively on the COVID and how it was approached in silos and how we had to take a unified approach in the last webinar. If you haven't watched it, then please go and watch it. It will have minimal effect on this, but you will get a better understanding. So 2020 में जो सबसे important topic था COVID. But along with COVID, there were many important top news hogging the headlines. First one was SDG India Index. Then you had the NIA Act, and there was a plea challenging the NIA Act, so which instantly became very important. Then you had the two sure shot questions on Citizenship Amendment Act and Article 370. Now, these all in individuals were there. Individually, ये सब questions बन सकते थे. Or if I say and combine these news items together, this again talked about federalism. यहाँ पे some aspect तो था हर किसी में. SDG India Index में there was a competition between state and state. NIA Act में there was center fettering with the powers of the state. Then there was Citizenship Amendment Act. It had a lot of federal dimensions and obviously Article 370 and the Kashmir myth making. So it is obvious that students that year were prepared for federalism. But what did UPSC exactly asked? Now, this was a very obvious theme. Even if you had read in silos, you would have read federalism. ये तो पढ़ा ही पढ़ा होगा. Indian federal system, center-state relations, Lakshmikant. What does UPSC throws you? It goes a step further and asks you about the various types of federalism that year. Cooperative, competitive, and confrontational federalism, and how they have shaped the nature of federation in India. So basically, फेडरलिज्म अगर लेवल 1 है आपका, तो ये लेवल 2 पे जाता है. और व्हाट इज द क्वेश्चन यू आर बीइंग आस्क्ड? नेचर ऑफ फेडरलिज्म, एंड इन दैट टाइप्स ऑफ फेडरलिज्म. नाउ सपोज यू वर अ स्टूडेंट गिविंग दिस, answering this particular question that year, तो मोर और लेस इंट्रोडक्शन आपका कुछ इन्हीं लाइंस पे होता, where you are explaining cooperation, competition, and confrontation have profoundly influenced the dynamics of federalism in India. You are agreeing with the question. Then the Constitution of India establishes a quasi-federal structure. You explain a bit of static. So if you see, this is essentially your understanding of the static. Now to the main part of the question, where it asks you to cite some recent examples. तो 3 segments है, दे दिया: cooperation, competition, confrontation. So these are the 3 different parts of your answer. You describe them in one line, and then you give example from that particular year. Now this is extensively current affairs. Now, once you break it down into these 3 broad columns, the answer seems very direct and very easy to crack. But वहां पे issue कहां पे होता है? Clubbing these points under their respective heads. Now you move to the conclusion. Conclusion में थोड़ा सा futuristic perspective देके आप इसको handle करते हो. Now this question was done in 2020. फिर आप लोग सब प्रिपरेशन के लिए आए, and you studied federalism from various aspects, and you studied the PYQs. In PYQs, that particular question was there. Now come the attempt of next year. 2024, you have prepared. The top news this year has been with respect to federalism. Supreme Court upholds states' power to regulate industrial alcohol. Then there was a question, article on states and centers fetter of net borrowing ceiling. तो यहाँ पे आप ये तो मार्क कर लोगे कौन से PYQ से ये रिलेट कर रहा है. So you prepare this news item on the basis of confrontational, cooperative, और उसको क्लब कर देते हो. If you are very aware of the particular theme of federalism, then you will probably also prepare around fiscal federalism. Now these are the static aspects. So again, when the question comes, suppose the question is repeated, आप देखो ये वाला part same है, and conclusion is also the same as the previous year, but change कहां पे आएगा? This part. Because the question clearly asks you, cite some recent examples to validate your answer. That is recent. So your examples are going to be in current context. जो 2 articles आपने पढ़ा अभी, net borrowing ceiling यहाँ पे आया, और आपका जो next है industrial alcohol case यहाँ पे आया. And these all have been somehow been in the news this year. Now, the 2 examples which we saw, there are first takeaway if we compare the answers of both the years. SDG India Index in 2019, net borrowing ceiling in 2024. In competitive federalism, the answer में था ease of doing business and smart cities mission, which became PLI schemes and state GDP rankings. So your answer significantly changes, though the aspects remain same. Is everybody with me till now? I will take all the questions in between. Just hear me out for initially. बाद में समझने में प्रॉब्लम होगा. Is everybody with me? सबको अभी तक समझ में आ रहा है? Okay. Now, second takeaway is static. आपने करंट अफेयर्स तो पढ़ा और पीवाईक्यू सॉल्व किया, वहां से आपको कॉन्फ्रंटेशनल कोऑपरेटिव कॉम्पिटिटिव फेडरलिज्म मिला. बट द फैक्ट ऑफ द मैटर इज, आप जो स्टैटिक बुक्स यूज करते हो, दैट इज लक्ष्मीकांत या डीटी बसु या एनसीईआरटीज, none of them extensively teach you these four aspects. राइट? किसी भी बुक में आपको इनका डिस्क्रिप्शन और वो नहीं मिलेगा. इट इज समथिंग, अगर आप उस स्टेज ऑफ प्रिपरेशन में हो तो आप रैंडमली यू विल कम अक्रॉस दीज थिंग्स ड्यूरिंग योर स्टेज ऑफ प्रिपरेशन. Now that is where most of the students mess up their preparation, because the static is not read in the context of current affairs, which is very essential for mains perspective. And the definitions, the exact definitions of these is impactful from prelims perspective. जो मेंस में कंटेंट है बट मार्क्स नहीं आ रहा है, ये वाला बहुतों के साथ प्रॉब्लम है. लेट अस एक्सेप्ट दैट. और वो क्यों प्रॉब्लम है? क्योंकि जो स्टैटिक और करंट अफेयर्स वो अलग अलग पढ़ा जाता है और फिर रट्टा मारा जाता है, अगर प्लेन लैंग्वेज में बोलूं. What is important is to read the static in the context of current affairs. So we have identified two key problems. एक लास्ट में जैसे था chaotic static sources, and then non-contextual current affairs theme, which we just read now. तो ये एग्जाम्पल अगर लूं, what do we read for static? These aspects. What we should read is this. Nature of it. Now, one thing I don't want anybody of you to do is, if you go ahead and read some new static books, that will just bulk up your preparation. इसको फिर पढ़ना कैसे है, that is what we are going to discuss today. कि हमें लक्ष्मीकांत ही पढ़ना है और करंट अफेयर्स ही पढ़ना है, हमें अपना सोर्स नहीं बढ़ाना है, बट हमें ये सब अपने स्टैटिक में ही कवर करना है. नाउ फॉर दैट you should have one consolidated source of current affairs, which teaches you both current news and then the static which is linked to that current. And once you have this consolidated source, this consolidated source should give you the required framework for taking action in current affairs related questions. So now let us go back to 2024, the two articles which we had taken. Industrial alcohol, and the next one was net borrowing ceiling. So now I'll देखो, लास्ट में दो जो मेजर डाउट आए थे, स्टैटिक और करंट अफेयर्स को बैलेंस कैसे करना है, और करंट अफेयर्स आप पढ़ सकते हो क्या इफ यू आर नॉट वेल वर्स विद द स्टैटिक. ये मेजरली प्रॉब्लम आता है इंटरनेशनल रिलेशंस, गवर्नेंस, सोशल जस्टिस, और मैंने अभी एग्जांपल दिखाया पॉलिटी का. तो एसेंशियली ये अक्रॉस द करंट अफेयर्स का प्रॉब्लम है. नाउ हाउ डू यू डील विद दैट? इसकी जहां पे करंट अफेयर्स आप पढ़ रहे हो वहीं पे आपको अगर उसका स्टैटिक मिल जा रहा है, that will solve half our problems. Now, these were the two current affairs items. So I'll give you brief Samachar Manthan class immersion or demo, how we approached this. This was somewhere around October 24th. This was somewhere around November first week ka article. So the SM class included this. First, we study the micro themes and see what kind of questions UPSC is throwing at us. Then we go to the level of current affairs. Ki what is the premise of that particular news item? Then we delineate the important points of the Supreme Court ruling. And then impact. अभी चीज है कि ये हर किसी में मोर और लेस सेम ही रहता है. कोई भी करंट अफेयर्स मैगजीन, कोई भी करंट अफेयर्स क्लास उठा लो. But then we understand what is the contextual static that is linked to this particular current affairs, and that is fiscal federalism. And then we break it down into components. What does fiscal federalism mean? You will get a number of documents across your preparation time to read what is fiscal federalism. But to make your answer writing easy, current affairs, static, PYQs, and your answer writing should be linked. So what does fiscal federalism truly mean? It means fiscal autonomy. It means equity. It means financial devolution. It means financial efficiency, revenue sharing, accountability, and legitimacy. So now if you see this, the acronym for fiscal federalism is federal, where we start with fiscal autonomy, and D is for devolution, E is for efficiency, R is for revenue sharing. Now one and so forth. Now once you have this framework, you will never forget this particular topic ever in your life. अभी fiscal federalism पे question आए या federalism regarding कुछ question आए, आपको points आता भी नहीं है, you have this framework to just put it in the exam. And then we analyze the Samachar Manthan way. How? The current affairs which we had just read in silos, now we place it in this framework. The element is fiscal autonomy. Now we analyze Supreme Court's ruling on state regulation of industrial alcohol with respect to the fiscal autonomy component. How does it impact state revenue generation and resource allocation? How does it impact equity, fair distribution of regulatory powers? So if you see each and every element of the fiscal federalism has been analyzed with respect to the impact of Supreme Court judgment. This is just one of example. Now, this is how a current affairs topic should be approached. Now, once you are aware of these 2 and 3 pages, you are basically aware of all the PYQs, the current affairs. Here is the PYQ, here is the current affairs, and then you have your own framework to handle any question regarding fiscal federalism. Am I clear till now? Now, someone in between asked कि हर पेपर में कितना परसेंट स्टैटिक रहता है, कितना परसेंट करंट अफेयर्स रहता है. प्लीज डू नॉट गो दैट वे. आप टॉपिक के मेरिट पे डिसाइड करो और जज करो. बिकॉज आई विल टेल यू सम रैंडम नंबर, देन यू गो देयर and you suddenly see UPSC has thrown you a bummer. That becomes very difficult to handle in the examination. Rather, you make your preparation as per static and current. Read the current, link it to static. तो आपको वो static जैसा लगेगा ही नहीं. अगर static का question आता भी है, you will be so well versed with the current affairs after this exercise. Then you will value add your static part with current affairs. मैं उसका एक example दे रहा हूँ मोहम्मद साकिब कि मैं क्या बात कर रहा हूँ exactly. जैसे suppose the question comes, now I'm framing a question instantly here. What do you mean by fiscal federalism? Has India uphold the value? Has India uphold the value of fiscal federalism? Now this is, you will feel it is a static question. आप static के आंसर लिख लोगे. फिजिकल फेडरलिज्म का डेफिनेशन, हैज इंडिया upheld, आप कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल प्रोविजंस लिख लोगे, तो आपका स्टैटिक आंसर बन गया. नाउ इमेजिन समवन हु इज वेरी वेल वर्स्ड विद करंट अफेयर्स, तो वो सेकंड हाफ में जो प्रोविजंस जहां पे लिखेगा वो एग्जांपल हर किसी में करंट अफेयर्स का देगा. मैं वही समझा रहा हूं कि जैसे ये आंसर का फ्रेम और स्ट्रक्चर है, इफ आई टेक यू बैक टू दैट आंसर पर्टिकुलरली, इसमें भी आपको मार्क मिल जाएगा इतना लिखोगे तो। ये सेकेंड हाफ ही नहीं मिलेगा ना अगर आप स्टैटिक और परसेंटेज वाइज डिवाइड करके चलोगे। बट द डिफरेंस इज 6 मार्क्स एंड 9 मार्क्स, इसमें डिफरेंस आएगा। तो दैट इज व्हाट आई एम टेलिंग, स्टैटिक इज द हीरो, करंट अफेयर्स इज द साइड हीरो, एंड बोथ ऑफ देम मेक अ सुपर्ब कास्ट। तो अभी अगेन विल टेक अनदर दिस नेट बोरोइंग सीलिंग वाला आर्टिकल जो था. So here if you see, we move ahead and discuss that particular current affairs. What are the arguments presented? What was the impact of borrowing? What is the need for reform? ये आपको हर करंट अफेयर्स मैगजीन में मिल जाएगा. और यहाँ पे अगर वो स्टैटिक देगा, जो जिसने पूछा कि इज देयर एनी अदर मैगजीन लाइक समाचार मंथन, इफ यू गो एंड सी अदर मैगजीन, एनी मैगजीन यू टेक फ्रॉम द मार्केट, तो उसका जो स्टैटिक पार्ट वो आपको देगा, वो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल प्रोविजंस देगा. बट इसका स्टैटिक पार्ट क्या है? एनालाइजिंग दिस पर्टिकुलर न्यूज आइटम फ्रॉम द पर्सपेक्टिव ऑफ फिस्कल फेडरलिज्म. अभी अगेन देखो, फ्रेमवर्क वही है, फेडरल, फिस्कल ऑटोनॉमी, इक्विटी, डेवोल्यूशन, एफिशिएंसी, रेवेन्यू शेयरिंग, अकाउंटेबिलिटी, लेजिटिमेसी. Now we have analyzed the entire news item again on the basis of these 6 or 7 components. So any news item comes which is related to fiscal federalism, we just need to place that news item in this federal framework. This example I'm giving of federalism. ये बाकियों का obviously frameworks change होते रहेंगे. Now we'll take another aspect. पहले हमने बात किया वो 2 न्यूज आइटम से फिस्कल फेडरलिज्म लाए. The amount of R&D that goes into finding the right context and the static part is really praiseworthy here. If you see this topic, Bureau of Indian Standard organizes workshop on National Agricultural Code. You take off any magazine, even your notes, दो चीजें crucial है यहाँ पे on the face of it: National Agriculture Code, Bureau of Indian Standards. You read Bureau of Indian Standards and all its provisions, कौन सा एक्ट से बना है, उसके और फीचर्स क्या है. दूसरा है नेशनल एग्रीकल्चरल कोड. अगेन नेशनल एग्रीकल्चर कोड के फीचर्स क्या है, सिग्निफिकेंस क्या है, मोर और लेस ये रहेगा आपका. आप जो नोट्स बनाओगे, व्हाट इज एनएससी, रोल ऑफ बीआईएस, नीड, सिग्निफिकेंस, चैलेंजेस, वे फॉरवर्ड. But what this article actually tells you is we are going towards standardization in agriculture. That is why we are developing a code so that the entire supply chain gets standardized. What is the need of standardization? Then we talk about agricultural standardization. Or फिर how national agricultural code enhances the standardization aspect and what is the linkage. अभी ये जो एनएससी लिंकेज है, इस पे आपको ये वाला पूरा जो रेगुलर स्ट्रक्चर है, इट इज जस्ट अ पार्ट ऑफ द एंटायर टॉपिक. दिस, but these aspects are very crucial for your preparation. That is standardization and need of it. I'll show you this by an example. So this is the news item. Bureau of Indian Standards has initiated the development of a National Agricultural Code similar to National Building Code and National Electrical Code. Now we talk about role of standardization. Now this is one of the major problems of agriculture. A farmer's produce is constantly rejected in the regional markets due to inconsistent quality and grading. Now, without standardized practices of quality assurance, such as uniform pest management and harvest timing, farmers often struggle to meet the market standards, which limits their market access and reduces their income potential. Now, once you standardize the entire process through a code, it will ensure quality and market access to the farmers. How? Through a comprehensive framework, sector-wide application, quality assurance, and market access. So this is the problem which the code addresses through this measure. Similarly, we move to the second problem of agriculture, that is the environmental aspect. And how does the code deal with that? Because it promotes adoption of sustainable practices. And that is where it leads to collaborative development, capacity building of farmers, and etc. Then right now there's a lot of influx of technology in Indian agriculture, but farmers lack clear guidelines for using those sensors to monitor soil moisture, leading to either over irrigation or under irrigation. Essentially, the code will integrate modern technology with Indian farming system. Now we move, once we have analyzed the topic from the perspective of standardization, we address the mains wala part. You understand the topic from a broader macro framework. And then you address how role of NSE in addressing the various components. So am I clear on this, everybody? Okay. So now we will take one more article, which is actually a very superlative magazine. And I'm not just telling because obviously I've been a part in its development, but it's superlative considering the magazine is really short. आपको कोई भी करंट अफेयर्स मैगजीन उठा लो, इट्स अ पेन टू रीड 150 पेजेस विदाउट नोइंग कि कौन सा आएगा कौन सा नहीं, क्या आएगा क्या नहीं. आई एम नॉट सजेस्टिंग कि ईच एंड एवरी इशू विल कम, बट इट विल develop your skill to address any question that UPSC throws. Now, this article and the current affairs in news, in every magazine you take up, you must have seen on high performance buildings. So they are considering it as the next step for sustainable urbanization. So this is the current affairs, and this is the contextual static, which we will take up in the class. Now, this particular topic, you will also get an idea कि यही particular topic आपको चारों पेपर में पूछा जा सकता है. If you pick up 2016 का mains paper, you will see urban flood came that year in GS1, GS3 and a case study some year later. तो आपका अगर वो स्किल डेवलप नहीं है, आप सिमिलर पॉइंट्स लिखते रहोगे हर पेपर में, बिकॉज यू हैव रेड अर्बन फ्लड, you have read urban flood probably in a current affairs magazine, but you will write those similar points कोई भी पेपर में पूछे. That's because you have not developed that skill of seeing it from a broader perspective. अभी GS1 में ये urbanization का टॉपिक हो सकता है, GS2 में अर्बन गवर्नेंस का टॉपिक हो सकता है, GS3 में एनवायरमेंट का टॉपिक हो सकता है, और GS4 में केस स्टडी हो सकता है, या फिर एनवायरमेंटल एथिक्स पे आपको पूछ सकता है. तो you need, unless you are reading it that way, or probably someone is telling you that in a class, it becomes very difficult for a student to attempt the same questions and write different answers depending on the paper in which UPSC is asking. Now, आपने GS 1, 2, 3, 4 में ये आएगा, पता लग गया आपको. Then you go to the current affairs. What are high performance buildings? What is the difference between high performance buildings and green buildings? So there are two aspects of difference. One is scope and focus. Second is tech and monitoring. And what are the features of high performance building? Then you go by linking it to the probable question of UPSC. How it is a keystone in India's sustainable urbanization model. Again, if you see, जैसे मैंने, I think I don't remember, sorry, I don't remember the name. One had asked कितने percent is static. I think Mohammed Saqib had just asked. If you see, this is a current affairs topic, but यहाँ पे we have taken up static for you, और यहाँ पे सारा examples use कर रहा है. तो अगर if you have this framework itself in your mind, अभी तक क्या है, this becomes an article. ये part अभी तक जो भी आप पढ़ रहे हो, this part becomes an article for you, and you take those points, note it down and try to remember them. But this one just takes you one step further कि आपको मैप करके खुद ही मिल गया है. Now this is how we are expecting we will go forth and make, if you're clearing prelims, and if you're not able to go till the interview, it's a crime, because prelims honestly is very tough. But mains, you have it in your hand, more than 2000 marks. So this is how we are planning to take up the entire current affairs thing with the linkage with the broader static part. Then coming to the second half, what we have here is back to basics. So that was the current affairs. This is the current affairs. This is the linkage with the static part. And then you have the static aspect, sustainable urbanization. और sustainable urbanization का यहाँ पे आपको framework मिल गया. What is sustainability, inclusiveness, and resilience. So these are the three broad frameworks of sustainable urbanization. अभी अगर high performance buildings के ऊपर question नहीं भी है, question is suppose say how are the government policies promoting sustainable urbanization in India? So you have the framework of sustainable urbanization. So what do? कि government policies sustainability कैसे impact कर रहे हैं? Government policies inclusiveness कैसे impact कर रहे हैं? Government policies resilience of urban ecosystems कैसे impact कर रहे हैं? अगर आपको इसका आंसर मिल गया, तो that is just the summation of all these points. इसको अगर फिर से ब्रेक डाउन करना है, sustainability is determined by sustainable mobility, sustainable energy system, sustainable environmental protection, and waste management. Trust me, these description part, once you're done, once we do this again and again in the class, this will become very easy for you to write it down अपने आप से. And this part, essentially final notes जो आपका बनेगा ना, वो इतना part ही रहेगा. Okay, we'll close that was my message to you.